The Nashville Predators got back in the win column with a 5-2 victory over the Colorado Avalanche. Today, we have a special post-game crossover with our Locked On Avalanche friends to talk about the game and what these two Central Division teams are both working on.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this special crossover edition of Locked On Predators and Locked On Avalanche. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We are, of course, your free daily Nashville Predators and Colorado Avalanche podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this special Monday crossover edition with a shout out, of course, to our everydayers and to our insiders. Thanks for joining us to talk Predators and Avalanche hockey on this Monday. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer with Penalty Box Radio. I am joined by my partner in crime, Emma Lingen. And today we are joined by two of our very favorites. Not that we play favorites, but if we did, they would maybe be ours. We have Chris and Kyle are joining us from the Locked On Avalanche podcast. And we are going to talk about not only the Saturday night game, but just what's going on with these two teams that have some really interesting starts to the season. Before we dive into all of these topics together, do want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, match with Indeed. All right, Emma, Kyle, Chris, first of all, thanks for jumping in and breaking down this game. I'll be honest with you. When we talked about doing this pregame, I thought, I don't know how many different ways I will have to apologize for what Nashville Predators fans see on the ice, but the Preds came away with a 5-2 win. There are reasons for that on both sides. But I did want to start off. One of the things that we do at Locked On Predators is we talk about one word to describe the game. And here's what's real. It doesn't have to be one word. Like, we make the rules, we break the rules. So I'm going to ask you, Chris, looking at that Saturday game between the Preds and the Avs, if you had to describe it in one word or two or three, how would you describe what you saw?
As far as the game, I posted the final score graphic after I posted it. I just put up frustrating because I thought the Avs played a good game, and good enough for what they have right now as a team and what they can put out there.
Yes.
And I did. I thought they, even going into the third, I thought they were going to have some opportunities. And the problem with the Avs right now is just they're not finishing. They're getting good looks. Mikko Rantanen just seems to have hit a wall and just has no luck on his side whatsoever to get a goal or anything going. So that's the frustrating part, is they're finally starting to play better hockey and maybe a little bit more consistent hockey. But we're so used to the Avalanche having victories and points to show for it. We're on the other side of that right now where they don't. And everything so far this year has been streaks. It's been a 4-game losing streak, a 5-game winning streak, and now a 3-game losing streak. So it's like, this is just a streaky team. It's an injured team, and it's a team that just is doing the best they can with what they have. It just can't seem to just come through when it's needed, which is just weird because you're just used to them doing that. You're just so used to them doing that.
Right.
And if I had to summarize this in one word, I would honestly, given the place that both teams are sitting in right now, the time of the season, and what these teams will look like, honestly, when it's crunch time, this was a forgettable game. When you're walking away, like we're battling about 7th and 8th place in the Central right now. Like, this isn't making any waves. It's not causing any harm. Everybody walked away. And when we get closer to playoff time, we're going to forget this game even happened, because the Avalanche will look different. Nashville is going to look different, and they're going to find their footing, both teams. And it's going to be one of those games that you look back in the highlight reels, you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. And that's all you're going to remember. It's just that brief little look.
Yeah. Emma, what about you? How would you describe Saturday night's game?
Honestly, my biggest takeaway was after like one period, I think I walked into the media room and was kind of talking to some of the other writers there. And I was like, that doesn't look like Colorado. Like, that's not the Colorado that we're used to. And I understand, obviously, injuries and a whole host of other things that they just, only have half their team, it seems like. But it looked like kind of the Nashville of last year, like really good top line and then very kind of forgettable underneath that. And it just seemed like, I don't know, it did not seem like the Colorado that we're used to, kind of fearing whenever they come and play in Nashville. And, as far as my one word, for how Nashville did in it, I would say, like, I mean, again, we break the rules. 2 words. I would say good enough. Like, they were good enough. They were good enough in this game to win. I don't think, I think the final score obviously very lopsided because there were a couple of empty net goals at the end there. It did not feel like an overly, dominant win or super impressive. And it really, to be honest, doesn't feel like Nashville has had any wins like that yet this year. Even the 4-0 shutout of Boston did not, if you're watching it, it did not feel like that, it didn't really feel like a blowout as you were watching it. And so it just, I don't know, they're still little by little, they're starting to get there. And I agree. I think that, these teams, they're still finding their footing and they'll get there. But as Anne, you and I have often, said to each other, it's like, God, we're gonna have to keep preaching patience for like half a season here. But it might actually take that long.
Yeah. One of the problems that Nashville has had early on, and we saw it, 5-game losing streak to start the season, which was really unexpected for Nashville, is like just kind of the chemistry isn't there. The reads aren't there. And so my one word is like meet the friends. Like Nashville looked like they had met each other before and maybe gone on a couple dates with their line mates, but they certainly weren't ready to meet the parents. Like maybe they would go out for a beer with the friends. And that's just as far as the relationship had gotten, because chemistry has been a real struggle for Nashville. That, like, if I look at their first 5 games, finding the right line combinations, finding players even that had been on the team last year under Andrew Brunette, who looked like they were playing a system they were familiar with, it was really hard to find those guys. So that's been a struggle. When you guys look back at Colorado's first, stretch of games where they really struggled to get a win, what was the overarching issue or problem that kind of got them out of the gate slower?
Goaltending. Flat out goaltending.
The one thing that Nashville does not have a problem with is the only thing Colorado has.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And it's a bit unfair to put. It always is. It's never fully the goaltender, right? There's always things that come into play, other factors and stuff like that. And that's true for the Avs. Defense was severely lacking, but that was just, I attributed that to just the start of the season. Start of the seasons are always a little bit wonky, but when you give up 8 goals in your first 2 games, it's going to look even worse. So it's been like, that was the big question going into the season for the Avs, is what's the goaltending going to look like? It's been a ride so far. It seems to, I don't want to say it's completely solved itself, but the answer right now is Justus Annunen. But people still have questions like, all right, like, he's never been, like, he's young. Like, is it too early to just tap him on the shoulder and be like, you're the guy? Because that's a lot to put on his shoulders. It was going to be kind of split up between the two of them, we thought, for the duration of this season, to see what you really have in Justus Annunen, because Kyle and I both feel like no matter what happened for Georgiev this year, this was going to be it for him. And then next year, if you saw a lot in Annunen, he could be your guy heading into next year. But right now, he's your number one guy. There's no doubt about it. And it's because of this start that Georgiev has had, and he's gotten better. But when you give up 8 goals, like, you're going to get better. It can't really get much worse. And he has gotten a little bit better. Is he fully like, you know, because he taken the title back from Annunen? Not at all. But that's been the problem. And this team just, if you want to use another word, like they don't have an identity right now. They don't know what they are. Like they used to be that team that would just punch you in the mouth, not literally because they're not a physical team, but they would just not back down from anybody. That top line would just blow over you. And the depth, while it wasn't the greatest, held its own. And now it's just a hodgepodge of guys and AHL guys, and a 7th rounder played yesterday or Saturday against you guys. So it's just a mix mash right now, and it's could be getting better. November, we know we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Like, I'm looking forward to November because that could be really when you start getting these guys slowly coming back into the fold.
And as Chris mentioned, this team is hodgepodge. This is half AHL. You still have Val Nichushkin lingering out there. Gabe Landeskog's return lingering out there. Arturi Lehkonen returning sometime. Ross Colton, hot start. Now he's gone. You have injuries depleting this roster. Defense, you're relying on guys like Calvin DeHaan, for goodness sake, on defense to keep this team going. And you now lead the league with 51 goals against. Have that kind of pressure on a hodgepodge team, that will provide a slow start for anybody.
And you're putting Oliver Shillington, a defender who struggled on defense, now he's playing forward right now.
Wow. Yeah.
Come on.
It didn't feel like Emma said, it didn't feel like the moral victory, like the great victory that you would feel defeating the Colorado Avalanche on Saturday night, because I would agree with Emma. Like, it didn't seem like the team that we know Colorado is going to. You all seem to hit your stride with that at the right time. And it just didn't seem like we saw that Saturday. Coming up, we're going to dive into some more of what the struggles have been for these two teams and what it's going to take to turn some things around for them as well. Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you can watch the winnings roll in. It's the way daily fantasy sports should be played. It's not you against 1,000 strangers. It's just you against the PrizePicks projections for your favorite players in your favorite sports. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your pick hits, you can withdraw your money in as quick as 15 minutes. Look, we know the Predators lean big time on Juuse Saros, and Nathan MacKinnon showed Saturday night why he is a player who can deliver for the Avs. Why not choose a more pick on Saros saves or MacKinnon points coming up this week? So download the PrizePicks app today and use our code LOCKEDONNHL. You're going to get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNHL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. So check out all the action at PrizePicks. Run your game. Today's episode's also brought to you by Indeed. Just like your favorite sports teams, we're all driven by the search for better. When it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and let them know you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Once again, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So you guys were talking about the Avalanche injury update, and it is like unfurling a scroll, y'all. It was really surprising. We got to see a hot lap from a rookie making their NHL debut Saturday night. You mentioned kind of hazy timeframes, if timeframes at all, for some of these guys. What is it going to take for the players in the lineup now in Colorado to carry this team until you get back to the roster that we all know and Nashville fears?
Go ahead, go.
Adamantium. No. It's really hard to keep this roster together with I mean, you started the season with injuries, and as the season's gone on, injuries, there's no way you can really avoid them. This isn't a strength and conditioning thing. This is just something you have to deal with. The Avalanche are just dealing with it all at once, and it just never seems to let up for the Avalanche. They're just unlucky at this point. But it's something you have to dig deep and get through. And that's where the Avalanche are sitting right now. You can either lick your wounds and woe is me, or you can lace up your skates and push through. And the Avalanche are right at that point where they have to start pushing through, because it's not going to get better. You're exhausting your AHL team, and you just started your 7th round draft pick in the Nashville game. Like, you're going to have to start accumulating wins with whoever's in that locker room. And that's where the Avs have to really start pushing forward and not just walking in expecting a win with the big names at the top of the roster.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to be this way. We knew October was going to be without everybody that we are without right now. And it was just hold your head above water for October. Just do that. And I think they did that. I think they were 5-5 for the month of October. So, and now you head into November, and you could potentially get everybody back with the exception of Ross Colton. He might be into December. I think they said 6 to 8 weeks for him. Right. So yeah, he won't be in November, but it's possible. Like we were talking before we recorded, like we don't know a time frame for Gabe Landeskog, but I'm going on his word of sooner rather than later is what he said. And that was in, I think, sometime in September at a golf outing. He said sooner rather than later. So we're in the sooner, Gabe. So like I'm looking for that. We knew that Lehkonen is coming back Tuesday. So he's the first one that's coming back in all of these guys that are out. The Nichushkin one is because of the suspension, and that is up on middle of November, 14th or 15th, something like that. And Jared Bednar has said the day he is reinstated by the league, he could play that day. So he's already in Denver. He's already practicing. He can't practice with the team, but he is doing his own workouts and stuff like that. So there's not going to be any of this like, oh, he needs to get into game shape after he's cleared to play. He's ready to go. So the second that the league says he's can play, he's going to play that day. Drouin, he's another one that we really haven't heard a lot on. It's just a week-to-week thing for him. He could be back, we would think, sometime in November. Who am I missing, Kyle? I forget all the names that got thrown out here, but it's like October was, like I said, just hold your head above water. November is, by the end of it, you should have most of your team back. And to answer your question, Ann, about like who needs to, like, what does this team need to do? I think the guys that kind of are taking their places right now aren't doing too bad. You have Ivan, who's been doing well. Like with when Ross Colton went out, they put him on the top power play. So he's earned that spot. Who else has been Kovalenko's been fantastic. He's been great. So they've had these guys that are there that are kind of taking the role, not long term, but they're there, they're doing well, and they're just holding the team together right now. So it hasn't been horrible, but it's definitely not what you've been missing by far.
Right. Yeah. Right. Well, and you have that Nathan McKinnon guy and some guy, Cale Makar.
Never heard of him.
Oh, can I tell you? I have to tell you a little sweet insider moment that I saw after the game. I was working on some things, and Mark Del Gaizo is a defenseman here for the Predators. And this is kind of his real he played 9 games last season, but this is really his his NHL opportunity. And he and Cale Makar were defensive partners in college. And so I was working on some things and I saw Mark Del Gaizo standing outside, just kind of hovering around. And I thought, oh, maybe his family's here or something.
Mhm.
And it was Cale Makar he was waiting for.
Oh,
And it was like, the mom in me is like, oh, it's the most beautiful moment that the roommate or the defensive pairing guys from college are meeting up. It was really sweet.
That's cool. That's really
why
cool.
I always say that about, when we're hyping up Mark Del Gaizo. I'm like, this guy, he hasn't really been in this role yet with Nashville because he hasn't needed to be, but it's like this guy can join in on the rush. And I always bring that up. I'm like, let us all remember who he played with in college. Like he knows how, Makar's the finisher, but Del Gaizo could get the play started and he can jump in on the rush, and he's really, he's sounding his own end too. But yeah, I was thinking about that too. I did not witness the moment like Ann did, but I was like, oh yeah, they're gonna see each other.
It was really sweet. We always joke around that like on the side, this is a little bit locked on Mark Del Gaizo because we just really think he's a really good player. He's going to be a good piece, I think, for Nashville going forward.
And that's something that you mentioned, but that's something the Avalanche play on a lot because Cale Makar is that sweet babyface, innocent, Cale Makar. And then you have like crazy, angry all the time Nathan MacKinnon. It's a good leadership balance in that locker room.
Yeah.
And it really helps this team balance out, and the personalities gravitate to those that you align with. So whatever personality does come up, AHL or whoever they can piece together in this lineup, you will find your brand of leadership in this Wild West of Colorado Avalanche.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because they're all just really nice. I would say, wouldn't you say, Emma? A lot of nice guys on the leadership.
We don't really have any like jerks. And I've worked with a number of teams before, and I say this all the time that I'm like, usually you have at least one, if not two or three, but like usually at least one. And Nashville really doesn't have one. And it's kind of funny. I mean, it's a good thing, I guess, but it's got me like looking around the locker room like, all right, what's your game? Like, what's your angle? Like, you're not actually this nice.
Yeah. Like the episode that Landeskog is in the Amazon series.
Uh-huh.
Kyle and I were talking about it with, the other guy in that episode. There's 2 other guys, but Trouba's in that episode. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I think this would be a good opportunity for him to show people like a different side of Trouba. I don't think he really did that. I think especially like, he comes across as like, no, I like to play that way. And I know he's got the whole like artistic thing and he's like a painter and everything. And that's cool. But like, I didn't come across as liking him like I thought I would. So he's that guy for the Rangers. He's that guy, the one guy that you're talking about. I totally feel like he's buying into that. And no, I'll be the bad guy. I have no problem being the bad guy.
Well, I would say because I talked to a number of people who watched the Amazon series and people who already did not care for Matthew Tkachuk. And then they watched the series and they were like hoping for, Anne was one. No. My boyfriend's another, but he's a Boston fan. So I'm like, I don't really take that. Like, of course you hate Matthew Tkachuk, but he was like, everyone was saying like, I was really hoping that they were going to like, make me like him. I think I like him less now after watching that show.
The arrogance was just, it was off the charts from him. Like, and I get
exactly, it was exactly who I thought you were, but really thought it was me and not you. And now I'm like, oh no, it's you. It's not me.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like he's kind of earned the right to be that arrogant, but I just I can't.
But you think about it.
With that.
Like you think about it though, and you and I have talked about this in Nashville's locker room. It's like there are guys who could be jerks if they, like I would say they've earned the right. Personally, no one has earned the right. Everyone should be nice, but like there are guys like Philip Forsberg, Roman Josi could easily just be
jerks,
arrogant jerks.
Ryan O'Reilly could be a total jerk.
Roman Josi.
Stamkos.
Oh yeah, Roman Josi is one of the nicest, not hockey players, but like human beings I have ever met on this earth. And it's like he's so good at what he does, and he's so nice, and he's so funny. He is so good looking, and it's just like really, like that. Really, can you? And we did learn. Oh, my dog had something to say about that too.
Likes Roman Josi. Yeah.
Yeah, big fan. Big fan.
I think it's interesting, though, you talk about the different personalities and how that works in the Avalanche locker room, because you do have some players who are motivated one way and some players who are motivated another way. I think that's a really interesting perspective. We used to have, a guy we had in common, great locker room guy, but if you were talking about somebody chippy on the ice, can we just take a minute for Kiefer Sherwood, y'all?
Oh boy, that's
I mean, we thank you so much, and then we went and Vancouver took him because he annoyed the fire out of them and caused them so much grief. But man, was he was a piece of work on the ice. Great guy off the ice, but man, was he a piece of work. Thank you. I liked him.
No, whenever they called him up, he was a hard worker. I really liked it. I didn't like losing him. Yeah,
he was a good scrappy guy. Did exactly what you wanted him to do.
The chemistry thing when it comes to the Avalanche, it's been something Kyle and I have talked about a lot over the last 2 years, because Gabe Landeskog has not been on the ice. And that's your captain. He's the one that holds like the team together. And there's been so many conversations about, is this team lacking that captain that's not there? I go on record like they're adults. They're grown men. Like, do they really need that one guy who has like the C on his sweater to really hold the team together? You can make the argument that yes, but I always said, like, there's other guys in that locker room that can do that job. Not the way that Landeskog does. He does it a completely different way than I would argue than any other captain in the league. But Kyle and I have been having this back and forth on who would it be? Who's the guy? I think it would be McKinnon. Kyle thinks it's more Makar. And other people are like, oh, it could be Devon Taves. Taves is a leader in that locker room, and he's even said some things to the media that you don't hear a lot. The Avalanche don't air the dirty laundry out like hardly ever. He did once last year, but it seemed to work. So people kind of gravitated towards him, towards a leader, but it's missing. And when you go without, even though he's around the team, not as much in the past 2 years, more now, I think it did weigh on them a little bit, or maybe a lot. That Landeskog was not there as much as they're used to him being there. And we had Katie Gauze on, who she was a sideline reporter for Altitude. She's not there anymore, but she said something at that time where she said something to the effect of like, Landeskog doesn't let the guys act a certain way, like act out. He won't let them do that. Like they really like fall in line between, no, this is how we act in the Colorado Avalanche world. And you're either going to do that or you're not going to be here. And it was like a moment for me. It was like, man, he's really got this team on lockdown.
Yeah. That's an important role. And I'm sure it's hard not to have that consistently with the team all the time.
Right.
Like that's a big piece missing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And we mentioned Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon as your generational talent that people gravitate to for the personality. But Chris mentioned Taze. Like, he's the guy who gets out there with no publicity, no pomp and circumstance, and he is the leader. He goes out there when these guys are getting called up. He asks for extra time with these guys on the ice to show them the Avalanche way. So, yes, you gravitate to the star power, but Taze is the guy behind the scenes who's actually leading the guys with his experience that he brought from New York.
I love that. Coming up, we're going to talk about what these teams who kind of struggled early in the season, what might they look like, say, around Thanksgiving. We're going to make some bold predictions. Today's episode's brought to you by Built. Listen up, renters. Ever feel like you're stuck in this loop of rent payments, just watching your money vanish into thin air? It's time to turn that rent game around and start earning some serious rewards. That's where Built Rewards comes in. Built is breaking ground as a neighborhood rewards program that hooks you up with points on your rent. Every month, pay your rent and watch those Built points roll in. Use points to jet off on a dream vacation. You can put your points towards toward a flight or a hotel stay with over 500 airlines and 700,000 hotels and properties. You can also use your points to book fitness studio classes. You can redeem them towards a future rent payment. They're designed to meet your lifestyle. You can pay rent hassle-free through the Built Rewards app. Your rent game just got a major upgrade. Built points have been consistently ranked the highest value point currency by the Points Guy and by Bankrate. Earn points by paying rent right now when you go to joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNHL. That's joinbilt.com/LockedOnNHL. Make sure to use our URL so they know we sent you. Joinbuilt.com/LockedOnNHL to start earning points with your rent payment today. Today's episode is brought to you also by our great friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle that NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, and it's all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of that game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, and you do it all on the same page where you place your bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Again, that's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. We were talking before the break about leadership, and it's so interesting to hear about the inside of the Avs locker room because Nashville's leadership situation is a little bit different in the sense that, of course, Roman Josi is the captain, and you've got Ryan O'Reilly in there, and you've got these veteran voices in Gus Nyquist, and you've got Luke Schenn. But then the Predators added Steven Stamkos, who, of course, longtime captain in Tampa Bay. And it's been really interesting, I think, to see how that group has come together, bringing in somebody like Steven Stamkos as far as the leadership piece goes. And so it's been interesting to watch that dynamic, which sounds very different than what you all have kind of dealt with in Colorado. I love that little peek kind of in the locker room behind the curtain of how all that works. It's been really interesting.
Well, the Avalanche also went through that when they brought in Jerome Iginla for a time, and that was also a Gabe Landeskog, Nathan McKinnon thing. So they also learned how to learn through that dynamic, and it's interesting to see Nashville going through that too, with some, like we mentioned in the last segment, like personality changes and how that locker room operates. To see Steven Stamkos like join in osmosis, I really have no problem with the Nashville team when they come in, when usually you have a beef with at least one or two players on the team. Like, Nashville's becoming a nice, likable team, and they're not too bad.
Thanks. We try. We try.
That's how Barry Trotz likes it.
Yeah, I've
true.
always said I like Forsberg a lot. Like, I would have a beer with that guy. He seems like just a really cool dude.
Would. Yeah.
He did when Ryan McDonough left, obviously in the off season. It was I think a lot of us maybe just assumed that the A that McDonough wore would go to Stamkos when he came in, because I mean, he had been a captain for so long, but it didn't. It ended up going to Forsberg rather quietly. They didn't announce it or do anything with it. You know, O'Reilly wears the other one. But I thought that was a nice, like, it was interesting, and I think it was a good move, because, you know, he's a guy that, you know, they signed him to that big extension a couple years ago, and he's probably going to be the last one of those that they sign for quite a while. And so I think that it kind of shows that this is a guy that we're investing in to be a big part of this team. And, you know, we want him to be that way in the locker room as well. So I think that was interesting. Another guy, and you were talking about Taves, as you were describing him, I kept thinking, I was like, that sounds like Colton Sissons. He's the guy who does not get the pomp and circumstance, but he is quietly one of the most reliable guys on the team. He is often anchoring lines with whoever the new players are, just because he is kind of that safety blanket, that security net for them. And so it is like different kind of leadership, a much quieter kind of leadership. But I mean, I think you need all of those different types.
Yeah. It's interesting to see the combinations come together when we're looking at on ice, just short-term future. Yes, it would be great to sit here and say, hey, here's who we think from the Central Division is going to make it, through into the playoffs. But let's just look as far ahead as like Thanksgiving, which is kind of a good first benchmark for a season. Where do you feel like the Avalanche are going to be at Thanksgiving? It sounds like, you're getting some of these players back. I'm assuming expectations are on the rise. And where do you see them, especially with this Central Division, the way it's sorting out right now?
You look at the schedule. Well, first, like if they can get these guys back, like the way, like I said, they're I feel like they are playing better. They're starting to come out of that doldrums of the start of the season, and I feel like they just need to put together full 60-minute games and just start getting some points back, right? But you look at the schedule, and they play a lot of games in November. They play 14 games in November, but only 4 of them are against the division. And one of them is already gone against you guys. So they only have 3 games left against division teams. So do I think they can make a dent in unless somebody else in the division just hits a wall? Like will Winnipeg start to lose sooner or later? Will it be in November? I don't know. So it might be a tough climb for the month of November to get, but I really don't want to look at so much as like the standings. I just want to see like, how are they playing? Do they have who do they get back in November? And, are we going to have a rocky start of the season 2.0 because you have so many guys coming back?
Right.
How many games do they need to get back into, the game shape? So I wish I have like 10 answers for you on where they could be by Thanksgiving, because there's still so many questions out there. And go back to the goalie part too. Like, will Annunen really take command of being the number 1 goalie? Do they make a trade? Like, Colton's out for a little while. I know it's really early in the season. You don't see a ton of trades early in the season. Could they be the team that forces the hand of another team to make a trade with them to kickstart something? But it's a fascinating time for the Avalanche. And by Thanksgiving, I gotta feel like they're really not, standings wise, I don't think they're really gonna, maybe they'll leapfrog one team, but I don't think it's gonna be like this ascent and just start slaying these teams are ahead of them right now. I just, the way that the schedule works out, I don't see it happening in November anyway.
No, I agree with Chris, because the situation in goal, you have Eustace, who's the hot hand right now, and Georgie, it's a mental thing. Like, he's got to get his confidence back.
Yeah.
And how can you, when your team is completely different night in, night out, and now you're going to be adding in people coming back from injury, and your games coming up, you have Seattle, and then you have Winnipeg. Can this team beat Winnipeg? No, probably not. And you've really got to scratch and claw. Your games that matter, I bring that up because that's a divisional game that matters at this point. And if you're going to try and make any kind of headway in the division, that's the game you have to do it. And you don't know what your team's going to look like on a night-to-night basis. So November is going to be a little rough and rocky, pardon the Colorado pun, but it's going to be interesting. And honestly, with all the pieces coming in and floating around and injuries, how they've gone for this team and what goaltending looks like, I know American Thanksgiving is usually the first indicator, but it's more realistically Christmas for this Colorado Avalanche before they can find identity and a foothold. And it might be a little too late when it comes to Christmas.
Well, I got a question though. Like, because remember, Ann, we did that season, before the season, and we all picked the team to miss the playoffs.
Yeah. How about that?
We all picked Winnipeg.
We did.
But are we there? Like, because they're bucking the trend, are we there where we're like, oh, Winnipeg is like totally legit? Like, I think they're a good team, but I don't think any of us think that they can keep this up.
They have a 45% power play. Come on. And not that their players aren't good.
Right. They have very good players on the team. Very good players. But are we there? Is that where we're at? Because they started off so hot, we're like, hands off Winnipeg. So I don't know. I'm not there yet with them. They had a great start. They've had a great you can't take that away from them.
Yeah.
But this was, Anaheim had a really good start 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm not comparing them to Anaheim. Calm down, people. But I'm just saying, you can't take how a team starts the season. You have to take the duration of the season. I still not sold on them, but
Well,
It's so funny though. It's so funny though how everyone, like, when I say this, apropos of nothing, when a team starts very poorly to start the season, suddenly then that's all anyone cares about, and the season is lost and it's terrible and just everything is awful.
And the
But
GM has made terrible mistakes.
fire the
we're
coach.
hearing that.
Oh yeah.
Yep. But that
Oh,
start will carry them in the eyes of the fan base for the rest of the season.
Yes.
And when they get to,
Yes.
if they like scratch to get into a playoff spot, it's like, well, they'll turn it back up like they did in the beginning of the season. You don't know that.
no.
You have no idea that that's going to happen.
Very different teams. Even if the roster looks the same, you are playing very different hockey in October than you are in April. And better, worse, it's different hockey.
Right.
Yeah,
For sure.
I will reflect on that episode every so often as I watch them rank up the wins
I mean,
and think, man,
right now,
we look dumb now.
Yeah, right now we look like idiots. Total idiots. I get
So
it.
dumb.
Yeah.
It's just hard as an Avalanche fan to have that optimism going into those games when you've already dropped a game to Columbus and Chicago already in the stretch. So
You're
to
right.
say beat Winnipeg as something that should be expected, it's a tall task to ask for a Colorado Avalanche team. Strip away the history and the names at the top.
I know, but he's right. He's right. Like, you, as an Avalanche fan, you can't go into that Winnipeg game like, oh yeah, we got that. No, it was based on history. Well, based on history, the last season, the Avalanche did horrible against Winnipeg in the regular season, and they're beating them in the playoffs. So it's just, that's why the NHL season is awesome, because it's just, you can never put your finger on the pulse of anything. And right now you can't do that with Winnipeg. Like, people feel like they're head and shoulders above everybody, but right today, sure. But let's let the season play out, people. Let's slow the roll a little bit. So
I would love to have you come on and do a little preaching as we gauge the panic-o-meter.
Can you come talk to Predators fans? They won't listen to us anymore.
They don't listen to us.
I'm dealing with Avalanche fans. So
they are not going to fire the coach. The GM is not a total idiot. And just everybody breathe. We always, people have been very impatient, I think, with Steven Stamkos. And our saying is he's still trying to find the ketchup at Trader Joe's. Like, dude is going through some things on and off the ice. Give him a second.
Yeah, I know.
Give him a second, y'all.
It's all panic time, especially the start of fan base hates to see their team just get out of the gates
slow.
Yeah, I get it. But that doesn't summarize how this team will be at the end of the year.
Oh, from your lips to the hockey god's ears. I mean, and to our listeners as well.
And then if it does happen that way, then fine. Then there's a time and a place to talk about that. And that's when you can look back, and look back at the season as a whole and say, okay, what went wrong? But it's not now. You don't do that now, because like you start just having these knee-jerk reactions on, oh, we got out of the gates bad, let's just change everything. You're not going to have a team. You can't do that year after year. You went into this season with good expectations. Let that play out. Let it play out. Let these guys get acclimated to each other. You have new players, especially you guys. Yeah, we had that conversation about, will it take some time for Nashville to gel? You're seeing the answer to that. Does that mean that just it didn't work, fire everybody? No, it doesn't mean that.
I am having such a hallelujah hockey moment right now. I'm just saying. I'm getting ready to go puck Pentecostal here. Oh man.
So
these two teams are gonna meet again in the not too distant future. Nashville's gonna be heading out on a Western road trip. Of course, they're gonna make their stop in Colorado, and we'll see again what the Avalanche roster is gonna be looking like then, how everybody's doing. We're gonna see how Nashville's chemistry and how this team is gelling. And, who knows, maybe we'll come back and do another crossover before or after that game and check in, because a lot can change in this league between now and then. A lot can change. Before we wrap up this crossover episode, gentlemen, Kyle and Chris, let us know where we can find your podcast and you guys also on social media.
Obviously, wherever you listen to your podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Just search Locked On Avalanche and LOPN_Avalanche on X or on Instagram, Threads, We don't do TikTok. I think we're too old for TikTok. At least I am. I don't know.
That
if
will
Kyle is.
preach.
Play the fifth.
So, yeah.
Yeah. That's,
And then Kyle has his own page, which you can follow him too.
Yeah, Shaggy
Yeah.
Von Doom everywhere you look.
that's right. And you know all of the cool hip lingo we learned before recording. So that's where
Yes.
you go for the cool hip lingo.
Our social media page is about to take off because we learned some new words.
I
Oh,
love that.
Yeah.
We're on
Yeah.
the rise, baby.
Yeah.
I love that. You can, of course, check out our podcast anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. We're on YouTube as well, on social media at LO_Predators. You can find me at AnnK_Mama on Ice. Emma, where can everyone find you and your work?
You can find me at Emma_Lingen on Twitter and Instagram. I am also too old for TikTok. And you can find my work online at the Hockey News.
That's right. We are old but wise. I'm glad everybody tuned into this episode. Hopefully, you learned something from these people who were too old for TikTok but know a thing or two about hockey. That is going to do it for today's crossover episode with the Locked On Predators podcast and Locked On Avalanche podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with an all new episode. Check us out then.